Welcome to Women of Resistance. Sanaa Wissam Hamad Alwadeh faced intense hunger, fear, humiliation, illness, all the pain that the genocide brought upon the people of Gaza. She says there's very little left of the Gaza they knew, but she's keen to tell her story so that history can record that they were a people who endured. Here is more of Sanaa.
On the cusp of another chapter in the Book of Palestine, Gazans have been told the pause button has been pressed on the live-stream genocide. For those who have lived through numerous false dawns, can they truly start to hope?
سناء وسام حماد الودية، عمري 40 سنة، أم لطفلين. كان أبويا بيشتغل ميكانيكي وأمي ربة بيت. كانت طفولتي رائعة جدا بالنسبة لما يعانيه أطفالنا هذه الأيام. بنلعب، بننبسط، بنجري، بنروح، بنيجي. كان شوي في أمان. الأيام فيش أمان، فيش حتى أماكن يلعبوا فيها، حتى البحر صار مكدس بالنازحين. وين يروحوا الأطفال؟ ما فيش منفس. أعتقد منذ نعومة أظافرنا وإحنا تحت الاحتلال، بداية من أجدادنا اللي ترحلوا في 48 وصولا لليوم. مررنا بكذا حرب متواصلة، وهذه الحرب كانت أعنف حرب في الحروب اللي إحنا خضناها وعشناها. أنا حرفيا عشت تقريبا 4 حروب، وهذه كانت الأعنف فيهم.
Sanaa's strength and determination during one of Palestine's darkest times was forged in the fires of knowledge.
درست في مدرسة دلال المغربي الثانوية، بعدين التحقت بالجامعة القدس المفتوحة، درست أونلاين خدمة اجتماعية. لم أكن أعمل، ولكن في هذه الحرب نظرا لظروف النازحين الشديدة، فرغبة الإنسانية وحبي لمساعدة الناس خلاني ألجأ إني أدخل في العمل الإنساني وأساعد الناس. أنا كنت من الطلاب المميزين، أنا كنت مجتهدة جدا في دراستي. معدلي تقريبا كان 96 أو 95 زي هيك، وما زلت يعني كمان درست الجمعية 93. أعتقد إنه التعليم كان مهم بالنسبة لي، لأنه هذا سلاح المرأة الأساسي والوحيد. مهما تقول يعني الزوج سند صحيح، الأب سند صحيح، لكن التعليم هو السند الأساسي وكل الحياة. هذه بيوسع المدارك، بيعرفك مين أنت، بحسن صورتك أمام نفسك.
The sheer terror of what Sanaa experienced during the genocide will stay with her until her last breath.
تجربتي في الإبادة الجماعية كانت قاسية ومريرة، بدءا من أول يوم قمت فيه بالنزوح. كان يوم جمعة، اتجهنا إلى الجنوب. أعتقد أني أنا لما طلعت من غزة تركت روحي هناك حرفياً، تركت بيت، تركت ذكريات، تركت جيران، تركت أهل، طلعت للمجهول. وصلنا رفح مع صلاة العصر، استضافونا عندهم 3 شهور. كنا في الشبورة في رفح. بعد هيك طالت الحرب، انتقلنا، تأجرنا بيت حرفياً أسطح، وإحنا عملنا في قلبها خيم نايلون، وقعدنا فيها تقريباً إحنا 32 نفر. بعدها صار دخول رفح، الأمر تخربط كتير، وجع تاني، نزوح تاني. الحمد لله إنه كان إلنا أرض بالزوايدة. بداية كان الإشي صعب في الزوايدة، ما فيش مية، ما فيش سبل للعيش. قررنا إحنا مجموعة شباب إنه نتكاتف لما بدأت الناس تيجي ويزيد الأعداد، أنشأنا مخيم كان اسمه مخيم الأخوة، ومشت الأمور. كان من الأشياء الصعبة، أنا بقول لك يعني من أصعب الأيام اللي مرت علي كان يوم ما أحداث الانصارات اللي كان فيها تحرير للأسرى اليهود. أنا حرفياً كنت في نص المعركة، كان الوضع صعب. كنت أنا وسلفتي وابنها عنده تأخر حركي، فكنت أنا وياها رايحين على مستشفى العودة على أساس يدلونا على دكتور أعصاب. فرحنا، فصارت الأحداث والكواد والأباتش والأف 16، وتشوف ناس مقطعة وأنت مش عارف تروح هيك ولا تروح هيك. خفت على الولد وأمه، كانت من أصعب الأوقات. أنا مش لازم أنا أنهار نهائياً، كان أنا لازم أقولها وين إحنا نروح. فهي كانت بتقول لنا نروح هيك، قلت لها لا، طلع في طيارات، في أباتشي، في حاجات صعبة كتير، في جثث بتطير، أنت وين ما بتمشي في مباني بتنزل. وقفت قويت حالي، تكتكت الخوف عني، وقلت لها اسمعي أنا بعرف الطريق. فخلص قلت لها إحنا بدنا نمر من جهة عيادة الانصراف ونضلنا ماشيين لحديت ما الله يفرجها علينا. وفعلا ضلينا نمشي لو وصلنا صيدلية، وقفنا فيها، قلت لها هلقيتها احنا لازم احنا نتصل على ازواجنا نقول لهم احنا هيك منحصرين في الانصراف مش قادرين نتحرك. فانا خفت على الولد، قلت لها هاتي احمل الولد. الجمله اللي اثرت فيا وخلتني واني اوصلها للامان، قالت لي خليه يموت في حضني ما يموتش معاكي. هذا اكتر اشي اثر فيا وخلاني اقوى وخلاني احكي انه لازم احنا نطلع. بس قلت لها بدل ما نضلنا نستنى احنا ننجب روحنا. فطلعنا ضلينا نمشي لحديت ما وصلنا، حرفيا وصلنا مدخل دير البلح مشي، ولقيناهم بيستنوا فينا واخذونا وروحنا. هذه اثرت فيا كثير، تاثير كثير، حتى اثرت على سلفتي بتخاف تطلع. انا قعدت بيجي 3 ايام وهي قعدت 3 ايام، احنا ما نتحركش، احنا قاعدين في حاله صدمه، انوجعنا، خفنا، اتأثرنا.
The destruction on display after the first ceasefire was announced earlier in 2025 had been mirrored by the second. Families like Sanaa's returning to the fragments of what's left of their lives.
فرحنا بالهدنة ورجعنا تاني على غزة. هذا كان قمة السعادة. كنت عارفة إنه متضررة، محروقة، وجزء منها مقصوف، وما فيش عفش إلا هذه بقايا شقتي الكبيرة. عن جد هدول بقايا شقتي. فإنه نرجع تاني نتهجر من تاني كان المرة هذه أصعب من المرة الأولى. المرة الأولى أنت كنت رايح للمجهول، المرة هذه رايح ومتأكد إنك أنت لما بدك ترجع، هذا إذا كان في رجعة مش راح تلاقي دار، مش راح تلاقي مكان، هيكون كله رايح. هذا بحد ذاته وجع. ترجع تاني للخيام، الإشي موجع لكل الناس، إنك تشوف كمية الناس اللي بتهاجر من غزة للجنوب، إشي مبهم. داخلين على مرحلة خطيرة، عن جد مرحلة خطيرة.
Like so many Palestinian mothers, Sanaa knows the pain and anguish of hearing your hungry children plead for something to eat.
المجاعة كانت من أصعب الأشياء اللي إحنا مرينا فيها، وأنا كنت مضطرة إني نخترع أي إشي عشان بس نسد أفواه أبنائنا، حرفياً بأقل الإمكانيات، بأقل الأشياء الموجودة، أي إشي بس إنك تغير على الأقلية طعم العدس في تم الأولاد، ما يحكوش كل يوم يا أمي عدس. فأثرت في الأطفال كلها. بتمنى إنه المجاعة تختفي، على الأقلية نحس حالنا إنه عايشين كبشر.
Somehow, with the help of the Most High, Palestinians persevere.
الصمود بيأتي أول إشي من رب العالمين. إيماننا القوي هو اللي بخلينا نقوى، واللي بخلينا محافظين على ثباتنا وصمودنا. كمان أولادنا إحنا لازم نكون قويين، عشان إذا إحنا انهارنا راح ينهاروا الأولاد وراح يتعبوا. فلازم نكون إحنا القوة، بيستمدوا منها القوة عشان يقدروا يعيشوا، يتحركوا حتى بأقل الإمكانيات.
Staying alive has always been the goal, but the obstacles sometimes appear insurmountable.
تحديات صعبة جدا جدا وكارثية، يعني الوضع مأساوي. المساحة ضيقت والإمكانيات قلت والموارد كمان قلت، مع تسكيرة المعابر الإشي صعب. المية، أنا تقريبا جوزي راح اللي جاب لي مية حلوة من دير البلح، شرى لي إياها، وإحنا بالنصيرات عندنا شح في المياه الحلوة، والمياه المالحة معدومة جدا. ولو بدك الأكل والشرب بدك تروح على الانصارات، أنت مضطر على سوق الانصارات، أنت مضطر تروح مشي. أنا ابني راح مشي اليوم وإجا مشي. الإشي صعب جدا، وضع كارثي مأساوي، غير اكتظاظ السكان، اكتظاظ النازحين بجانب بعضهم. في نازحين كمان على الطرقات منتشرة إلها 3 أيام، ملهاش مكان، ملهاش مأوى. وضع يرثى له. قصة العلاج منعدم، مش موجود في الصيدليات. أنا عندي بعاني من بعض الأمراض، عن جد أنا مش لاقية لها علاج. أنا مضطرة إني أعيش بدون العلاجات هذه بأقل الإمكانيات، على بس أكمل هذا إذا وجد.
The genocide hasn't just changed the landscape and the psyche, it changed something else. The way some Gazans now view each other. Desperation had caused something to shift in a very small minority, and Sanaa, like so many others, miss what has been taken.
أعتقد الأمن والنظام في حالة يرثى لها. في سقوط في النظام، ما فيش حدا يحكم. أعتقد سادت البلطجة، وصار ظاهرة جديدة اللصوص. كانت هذه الظاهرة مغيبة تماما، لا شيء يذكر. كنا في أمان في غزة. بعد الحرب هذه صار الإشي صعب وبشع، صار حروب أهلية. الإشي متعب ومرهق إنك ما تعيشش بأمان. وين غزة زمان؟ راحت.
Sanaa recognizes she can never go back to what was, but she wants her voice heard, her story told, as she makes her quiet yet bold proclamation. We matter, here we stand.
من المهم أن تسمع قصتي، لأنها كباقي قصص النساء. ما مررنا به كان صعب جدا، ويجب أن يوثق في كتب التاريخ أننا أصحاب قضية وأصحاب حق، ومررنا بكثير وما زلنا صامدين. نحن قوينا أنفسنا بأنفسنا، نحن صمدنا بأنفسنا، وواجهنا الكثير والكثير مما مررنا به من هذه الحرب البشعة نقدر نقول. فلازم يتوثق كل شيء في غياب الصحفيين، في غياب كلمة الحق. لازم إنه يتوثق كل شيء عشان يشوفوا الناس إحنا بالأساس شعب بحب الحياة، نستحق أن نعيش.
Joining me in the studio today to discuss Sanaa's story is Marc Wadsworth, an award-winning Black rights campaigner and journalist. Welcome, Marc. Thank you so much for coming in.
What a powerful testimony and inspiring from a woman's perspective, and it's such a needed voice, isn't it, in media?
Absolutely. And why do you think we need it more now, Marc? Because you know, she's saying that a lot of journalists have been killed in Gaza, and therefore she feels the need now to tell the story, you know, which is quite powerful. Why has it come to this, though?
Well, we know that almost 300 journalists have been slaughtered by the genocidal Israeli regime. And there's a reason for why. They're refusing any journalists, Israelis, from outside, from anywhere in the world. This is the most journalists killed in any conflict, even since the Second World War, when the Nazis were running riot throughout Europe. And there's a reason for this. The Netanyahus of this world, the right-wing cabinet members, in fact his whole cabinet, his whole government, don't want scrutiny. They don't want first-hand eyewitness accounts from the ground of the genocide, of the slaughter, of the massacre that is going on. Let me debunk one word. This has not been a war. This has been a genocide. How can you call it a war? And this is a lie that's being promulgated in the British news media, that this is somehow a war.
It's interesting, Marc, because you are a journalist, I'm a journalist, and I think before our eyes we have seen the whole journalism flips upside down. I mean, you have journalists being killed and ordinary women standing up and saying we'll still have our voices heard. But then you have the legacy media here that you're talking about. You've worked in the BBC, you've had some experience of working there. What do you say about the way they have covered the story of Palestine?
Well, the BBC, the British Bias Corporation, represents the voice of the government. And so if you have a government of Keir Starmer that is pro-Zionist, pro-colonialist, pro-apartheid Israel, then that is what is reflected in the journalism. Jeremy Bowen, their foreign editor, is only now coming around to exposing more about the genocide, but they won't use the G word.
Yeah.
How can it be a war when the Palestinians don't have an army, they don't have a navy, they don't have an anti-tank or anti-aircraft artillery? It's like a grown-up beating up an infant. You can't call this equal, you can't call it fair. It's war crimes for journalists to be killed and targeted. It's war crimes to deny aid to come into the country. You've seen even with this so-called ceasefire that the Rafah crossing, the main crossing from Egypt, is still closed, kept closed by the Israeli Defense Forces. That's a war crime. And you have a Starmer who said it was just and right for water, for energy, for food to be denied the Palestinians. So he was supporting and complicit in a major war crime.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll come back to our government and, how we are occupied also in this land. But just on the issue of journalism, Marc, we were just having a chat before and talking about how when we came into the profession, we were so idealistic. We believed journalism was going to change the world. We fought cost to ourselves, Where is journalism today? How do you see it, not just in the West, but also globally? What's your perspective of how the field has changed?
Do we have to have an air of some optimism. The below 35-year-olds, people younger than us, are rejecting what you call legacy media, mainstream media. And they have their alternative ways through social media to communicate with each other. And so there is a counterbalance to what's going on. Yes, there's some awful journalism, but there's some fantastic alternative voices being heard and spread, and there's the left media as well that does its bit.
And of course, alternative media such as ours, we are ensuring that we not just cover the story of Palestine as correctly as per the view of the Palestinians, but women in particular, they've always been subjected to the maximum pain in any war. And these women of Palestine are just amazing. You heard her story, despite everything she's been through, the resistance in her voice, is that something that you are quite used to as a, Black rights campaigner? I'm just going to recap and then come back to you for that. Just reminding our viewers really that you are watching Women of Resistance, where we highlight the plight of women who have been subjected to a genocide in Gaza. Marc, what parallels do you see with the work that you've done for years? You're an award-winning Black rights campaigner.
Well, we had heroes like Claudia Jones, who came from Trinidad and started the West Indian Gazette in Britain. She was a communist. She was a Black rights and liberation champion. Women have played a huge role. Amy Garvey, Marcus Garvey's wife, who lived longer than him, she was a very powerful voice. In the country that you come from, Tanzania,
Absolutely.
We have a woman president, one of the few. I think there have only been 4 or 5 women presidents in Africa, including in Ethiopia and now also in Namibia. Women of color in the global south are the future.
But I have to pick up one issue talking about Africa with you. Yes, we have women of color, but they aren't always on the right side of history, Marc. Tanzania today is not the Tanzania of Mwalimu Nyerere, who are in the forefront of fighting for the rights of Palestinians. Today, even going onto the streets to protest or to, speak up for Palestinians is a major issue. How has this come about?
Well, just because someone's a woman, just because someone's a person of colour, doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be on the side of justice. Look at Kemi Badenoch in Britain, the leader of the Conservatives, who is of Nigerian descent, Nigerian parents. She's awful on migration. She's awful on issues of fighting racism because she's a right-winger. Some of these questions are about class. They're not just about colour or gender.
Absolutely.
And
I mean,
she
we have
places Preeti Patel, Suella Braverman, David Lammy, who I
Shabana
know.
Mahmood now.
Yes, this justice minister who wants to clamp down on Muslim rights. She's more for the Zionists than she is for her own colour and her own religion as a Muslim. So let's not all automatically think. I mean, Margaret Thatcher was a woman, but she did nothing for women's rights. So it doesn't always follow that just because you come from an oppressed group, you've got to be in favour and in support of the oppressed.
Absolutely. Going back to Palestine, you know, there is now this ceasefire that's really hanging by the thread. What do you think, Mark? Where do you think this is all going? Do you have faith in, you know, some peace in the Middle East?
There can't be peace unless Palestine is free. This is about the occupation being removed, the Israelis moving back to the 1967 borders, which includes leaving the Golan Heights in Syria. Let's look at this. It's not just about the West Bank and Gaza. This is about Lebanon. This is about Syria. This is about attacks on Iran. And Press TV does a great job. Al Jazeera and others do a great job in telling the truth to the world, because there are a lot of lies. There's a lot of Western propaganda. And we know whose interests are being served by these news outlets that, frankly, are a part of the crimes against Palestine and the oppressed in the West Asia, in the region. And they will have their day when they will be put on trial, as well as the politicians. They've been complicit in this genocide.
Now, talking of this propaganda and all these people who are complicit here, Mark, I think we have come quite a way in the activism, you know, forcing even though they are still quite complicit, there's been very strong activism for Palestine in the Western countries, or around the world, to be honest. Do you feel that this sort of a ceasefire can push that back? People can become a bit more complacent and think there's a ceasefire and not see the bigger picture? Or do you think we've gone way past that, you know, lies anymore?
But in the short period since the so-called ceasefire, the Israelis have got their hostages back. We've had a few hostages back from Israel, and that's what they were. They weren't, you notice the difference in language. Their people in captivity are hostages, our people are prisoners. So there needs to be a reset. And I'm saying that the Muslim countries, the Arab countries, particularly the Gulf states, need to do a lot more. Their peoples are demanding, their masses are demanding that they do a lot more to support the Palestinian cause and oppose the occupation and support the resistance. It's not happening because they're in the back pockets of the Americans and the West. It's about money to them, not about principle and morality. And I want to see another Arab Spring. I think that's the only way we move our leaders, our rulers. We need that in Africa. We need that in the global south, as you've seen in just recently in Madagascar. And more will come. I was in Egypt in 2011, Tahrir Square. And unfortunately, that was subverted. And Sisi, who was the enemy in a military uniform, then in with the Americans, took his uniform off and is now the president of Egypt. This is the problem. We have a problem, a crisis of leadership, not just in the Arab world and West Asia, but in this country, in Britain. But the resistance will continue. There are still pro-Palestine marches going on, despite this Mahmoud Justice Secretary saying she wants to ban them, and Starmer wanting to ban them. We will continue to resist. 80-year-olds, pastors, priests, pensioners are being arrested for holding up a board
Absolutely.
against genocide and in support of Palestine action.
Absolutely. I think it's, the lead has been lifted and we're not going back. And this is for global activism. People have to continue fighting for the truth, because otherwise we'll all remain occupied. Thank you so much, Marc. It's been a pleasure having you. And
Sakina.
thank you all for watching. We leave you with The Sounds of Palestine by the artist Saif. Goodbye.